with slide playing, it comes from within. It's an expression that you have to make that comes from storytelling.
Viral sensation AJ Ghent has crafted a distinctive singing voice on guitar, blending lap steel techniques with mindfulness.
Vibration is everything, and I believe that is what connects.
Through his music, AJ has touched nearly 2 million listeners across social media, offering moments of reflection and healing.
It's humbling, and it keeps me just in a place of purpose and understanding that it's bigger than music.
In this episode of Guitars of R&B, AJ reflects on a family story that made him rethink where his musical gift really comes from.
That's extremely amazing to me, because it lets me know, spiritually and genetically, this thing runs deep.
And we touch on where lap steel guitar fits into the future of R&B music.
It can do more than just sing, right? You can play beautiful R&B chords with it as well.
Let's get into what you do. To someone who's never heard you play before, how do you describe what you do?
I used to describe myself as a guitar player. And then after realizing I wasn't playing guitar traditionally, I started calling myself a slide player. And then realizing that, a slide guitar player still isn't exactly what I've been doing. And honestly, from testimonies in the comments that I've been witnessing throughout social media of how the music that I produce and create makes people feel, I started calling myself a sound healer, because that's what it's been doing. So that's the latest term, I guess, for what I do, at least.
Exactly. And the thing is, and like you say, you called yourself a guitarist initially.
Yeah.
How different is what you do to a standard guitarist, in terms of playing and, what we see and hear?
Well, it's totally different. It's totally different. I have a lot of videos where I'm playing a standard guitar and I'm using a glass slide and I'm playing it over the top, if you will. And then I started picking back up the lap steel, because originally I'm a steel guitar player. And when I realized that the lap steel wasn't being played on my lap, I could no longer call it a lap steel guitar. And then understanding that I don't use a steel bar or a steel slide, which is where the term came from, lap steel. I said, I gotta take that name and run away from it and say something else. I actually use a gemstone slide to make the guitar sing. So everything that I've been doing musically with the guitar is totally unorthodox and different. So, it's just I'm just going along with it. That's our flow.
You're making your own, you're carving your own lane in a way, aren't you?
In a way, yeah. It's definitely that. And so, and it's inspiring just to see the growth and how I, find different ways to create.
And your phrasing sounds more vocal driven rather than guitar driven. So how much of your playing comes from listening to singers?
I grew up listening to a lot of singing. The past, though, maybe 10, 15 years or so, I haven't been listening to much of any singing, if you will. And I'm more so channeling what's within, because I'm also a singer. If I listen too much to a certain vocal, then I'm mimicking it, and I don't really want to have to do that. And right. Because at this point in my music journey, I'm really interested in creating a sound that's unique. So I just try to create, from within and, allow it to come out. But yeah, definitely, I'm over answering the question. But
no, but do you feel that your background in singing has helped you then? Because there's different inflections, isn't there, when you're a singer and and how you use your voice as an instrument inside. Do you think that helps you when you play?
I think it helps me a lot. Even I don't sing as well as my guitar does, but but it definitely I feel like understanding melody and where to place certain phrases does help a lot. Yeah, it does.
And so what's your approach to storytelling then? Because you're singing with the guitar, but you're not singing lyrics. But some of the songs you play do have the lyrics that we know and love. So how do you approach storytelling in that way, you know?
Well, it's all about melody, melody and experience, and so because the songs don't have, any lyrics, I, I, I do my best to play what I've been through and I put melodies to it and I allow the listener to create what they want from it, So if it's a song that makes you want to release and you want to cry, you do that. If get joy, you jump up and down, you laugh, whatever it does for you, I kind of leave that open. It's like a blank canvas in a way, lyrically, for you to be able to experience the music the way you need. So I'm just I just paint it in a way and then say, hey, here, you have it. So it's different, but,
It's working.
As long as it's working.
It's working for you because I have to talk about, you have exploded, but I know that COVID was quite a pivotal moment for you. But what was life like for you as a guitarist before that shift, before the COVID shift? What was life like?
Trying to fit in. I was trying to fit in to what I thought I should have been doing, and I think that's one of the dangers of society today. We watching so much until we're becoming totally unaware of who we are. And that's what I was doing. I was watching and I thought that I was supposed to be this person and that person. And while still being me, but feeling like I have to go a certain route and a certain path. And many times, it takes world ending events, if you will, to sometimes slow us down and make you think like, if this was gone tomorrow, would I be proud of what I did? Can I say that I actually helped someone change their life? And that thought started, really going back and forth with me. I've found that what works for me best is utilizing the instrument as a tool, for healing purposes. And I don't see me going backwards. I'm gonna keep pressing forward. So.
Yeah, but before you got to that, there was one viral moment that changed everything. So what was that?
Oh, well, actually, there was one moment, 2019. I was playing at a funeral. On that particular video, I was using a regular guitar because that's what I would use a lot. I was infatuated with the sound of a standard guitar, and I wanted to be able to put, the sliding style, singing style, if you will, to it. And so, video went viral. From that standpoint, it sparked something.
Was that the defining moment for you?
Well, it brought me back home because when I first learned how to play, it was just instrumental. Growing up in church, I would still come outside of that building and listen to all different types of music. And so I would mimic, again, the vocal sounds and all of that from a Whitney Houston, James Brown. It doesn't matter who it was. I was just trying to mimic it. And so it brought me back to that place. And when I was in that place at the time, I was told, hey, whatever you do, this is cool, but, it'll never work. You just playing the instrument, and mimicking the vocal, it won't work, And so in that moment of the video going viral, just, witnessing the response, I'm like, yeah, I've always had it. It's always been there. And it was just good to be back home with it from where it first started.
Well, it's obviously resonating because your socials have completely blown up. I mean, collectively, you've got over 1 million followers and subscribers. Do you stay grounded to that purpose with all of this going on?
Life keeps me in that place. Believe me when I say, it looks one way from the outside, but I still work hard for it. I still, I don't, It's not, I love the smiles and the testimonies from those who the music, from those who are being healed and from the music itself. But there are other entities that you still have to sometimes fight. I'm a very down to earth person. I understand the purpose has a certain path, and and my love for what I do just keeps me there, and
Yeah.
I can never go above that.
Yeah. I think part of your sort of brand is the sort of powerful testimonies that people have shared with how your music connects with them. What are some of those stories that the standout ones that you remember?
It's so many because it's hard for me many times to talk about it only because it could be so controversial. I've heard stories of an individual saying, hey, they had, extremely, high blood pressure and the music helped, regulate the blood pressure. Or I've heard a story where a husband says that he's, nice again to his wife, when he listens to the music. Or how I just had someone, tell me just the other day how, they was thinking about ending their life, and they heard the music and it stopped them. So it's so many, different testimonies, and that alone, itself keeps me in a place where I'm like, man, you got a responsibility, and there's really nothing out here that should turn you from that responsibility because it's actually working, and so. Um, but it's so many stories, and I never actually get to share them, right? And but it's humbling, and it keeps me just in a place of purpose and understanding that it's bigger than music, it's purpose.
What is it about your playing that's connecting with people, do you think? Or the way that you play?
I'm not thinking about it. I don't think about it. I have one of my biggest songs, "Singing Guitar Vibes," it's like a 10+ minute song, and I was brave enough to do 2 parts to it. Go figure. And it's just me just playing. I created the most simplified track that I could, looped it, and I sat in a room one day and I closed my eyes and started playing. And literally what you hear is just one take of what I wanted to express in that moment. So I don't think deep about it. I just play. And so I learned to not play to um, musicians. And I know that's different, and the reason why I've learned not to do that is because if you get so conscious over what you're doing to impress, it's not going to be felt. It's not going to be felt. It's very important to play to that inner part of the person that needs to hear and feel what it is that you're bringing to the table. If you play to the idea of a musician, then I believe it's just an ego thing that's just back and forth. That's all that is. And so I don't think about it. I close my eyes. Many times live, I close my eyes and I just play.
I love that because it's so easy as musicians to let ego drive, it drive you and play for applause and play for the adulation. But when did that shift happen for you then? Because you said you learned not to play for musicians, but when did that happen? When did you notice that?
That happened, honestly, that happened years ago, growing up playing in church.
Okay.
Yeah, because I noticed that when I became a little too conscious over what I was doing, literally, never came across the right way. And I noticed when I would close my eyes and allow it to just come to me, those were the greatest moments. The greatest moments when I wasn't thinking too deep about exactly what I'm doing and just allowing myself to, to go to that place, And I think that's, if you hear a musician say, hey, almost like even a painter, who says, I'll never create that again.
Yeah.
It's because when it was being created, they weren't so driven on trying to create this perfect masterpiece. You was just expressing yourself, and so I learned that then, and it's stuck with me to this day.
Valuable that. And we want to talk about your rich lineage, your family history, because your talents go back to the 1930s. How early did it enter the picture for you, this lap steel history?
Interesting story, because my great uncle Willie Eason brought the lap steel guitar in the church, setting, and he was the first to try to emulate the words of a song, so the melody. And so one of the first songs he played in church was Just a Closer Walk with Thee, the actual hymn. And the response he got, I think, really just kind of shook the earth within him. And from there, my grandfather comes along, and he truly becomes known to make the guitar, wail and talk and all these different other type of, ways to explain or express himself. And there's the difference between Mahalia Jackson and then when my father comes and really starts making it sing, Whitney Houston, right? I always give those examples, for vocalists and musicians to understand the difference. And not that one was better than the other. It was just a different type of expression, within the vibrations, the run patterns and everything like that. I wasn't taught by my father, and he wasn't taught by his father. So nobody taught anybody. Nobody sat down with, we didn't sit down with each other and say, hey, you play it like this, you play it like that. And that's extremely amazing to me, because it lets me know, spiritually and genetically, this thing runs deep. At first, I didn't want to play because I didn't, I didn't grow up around my father, and my father didn't grow up around his father, to make it all, help it make sense. And so I didn't want to be anything like them at all. And, there was this time when I felt, especially when you get into teenage years, you start feeling all different type of ways. I was growing up, and this sense of love, I needed this sense of love, and I felt like I wasn't receiving it from him.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to prove something to him. And through that, I picked the instrument up, and I always had a love for it, but I just rebelled against playing. I just didn't want to do it. And, it went from trying to prove something to literally trying to heal myself at the time, and that's the full circle moment, today, because in order for me to say that I am doing that for, a stranger, walking on the street, I had to do it for me first. And in those moments, that's basically what happened. And I spent many, many, many nights and just by myself in the room playing, and no guidance, no nothing. And I believe, without a shot of a doubt, that a big impact, a spiritual thing happened within those moments that, got me here to this place. I believe I've been shielded and protected for this moment all of these years,
That is so powerful, because you're doing for others what it did for you in a way. And that's kind of closing that circle, isn't it? Breaking the generational curses, I guess, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is. And so powerful and just so meaningful to me in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. So beyond church then, who were your influences outside of gospel, if you like, musical influences?
Outside of my family, it would be Prince.
Okay.
From a standpoint of just creativity and not living within a box. How I play is very similar to how I live. It's very unique. It's different. And so he's been an influence outside of my actual, grandfather, father, and great uncle. His last name is Nelson, and so is my father's. So I don't know. Maybe there's a relation. So
you never know. You never know. It's the gifts, the talents, unexplained talents. Let's get into a bit of the technique then, because you play lap steel standing up, which is rare. So how does it affect what you do musically?
Well, when I'm creating the music, I'm sitting down, and I've tried to get out of doing that. I try to create now standing up because that's how I'm going to perform. Because when I'm sitting down and playing, it's a whole nother experience than when I'm standing up, because I can see the guitar closer. As you know, I'm playing, like this, if you will, and I can't see the fretboard. I don't really, I can see it enough to make sure I'm hitting the right notes, but I'm using also a lot of vibrato technique to get me in and out of the notes. And so it's comfortable for me to play that way now, versus, on my lap. So it's it's something I created, and now I got to live with it.
Is vibrato and sort of phrasing something you had to consciously work on, or did that sort of naturally develop over time?
I don't pay any mind to it. If I'm listening to myself, and which I try not to do too much, then I'll start critiquing in certain ways. That's kind of like, man, leave it alone. Don't, because, sometimes I may feel like it's overused at times, but then that's the musician in me, not the sound healer, if you will. And so, if it's working for the people, for the listener, that's all that's important for me. So I have to take AJ outside of it and say, hey man, you can, whatever you're doing, keep that up. Don't get too caught up, with perfecting a technique.
Picking up on that point, do you feel like it's the sort of wailing of the vibrato that's connecting to people?
Definitely. I think that's the key. I think the key is vibration. I think vibration is everything. And I believe that is what connects. It's a certain, one would say technique. I'd say, hey man, I don't know. It's life, it's story. Because everybody has a different vibration. I can show you a specific move on the guitar, on the steel guitar, and your vibration is going to be different from, naturally. No matter how much I show you and say, hey, no, do it like this, it's going to be different. So it's whatever vibration that I have going on with my hand is what's connected, So yeah, definitely that plays a very important part.
Yeah. And for anyone who's into gear then, what else are you using for your sound? What are the pedals that you use? Do you use pedals?
The bulk of my sound literally just comes from my hands and the guitar. I right now I use this big looper board because I loop a lot of my songs, and I loop on the spot live. And I just started playing around with just maybe like some different synth sounds and stuff like that. But that stuff is to create the actual music itself. But my guitar playing, and as far as that, I used to rely on a lot of distortion until I realized that it was important for the type of music that I was creating to have clarity. And so I began to fall in love with playing as clean as possible. that could be difficult from a guitar standpoint because you hear every single thing.
What about delay pedals or reverb?
Well, I guess those are effects, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't play. It is hard for me to play, dry without any type of reverb or anything. I use a little bit of delay. I use that stuff as modest as possible. Don't get me wrong. In a live show, I'll throw on, some different sounds, maybe a chorus here or whatever. I got this on my board in H90, Eventide H90, and so I don't really use a whole lot of the sounds out of it. I may have just a couple sounds, but if I'm, just feeling like, hey, all right, let's try something different, I'll step on a different sound, but I'm not relying on it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not relying on it at all. You give me a simple spring reverb, maybe a little bit of analog delay, and I'm good to go.
Is your tone from the glass slide really, or
that's where it all, because I'm gonna sound the same no matter what. I can throw all these effects on it or not. You're still gonna sound like you. There's only so much that you're gonna be able to do to cover up your playing, and so I've fallen in love with the idea of simplicity. A lot of times, depending on the amps and electronics, sometimes the sound could come across a bit compressed. Yeah. I'm sure that probably helps the sound a little bit as far as sustain, but it's really, just hands and storage.
And earlier you said that you use a different kind of slide. What was it that you don't use glass, you said?
No, I use I was using glass. I used to use glass, and then, I started out using a steel bar. Actually, to be candid, I started out using a AA battery. I started, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. So I was using a AA battery, and then I started using the correct steel bar, and then I started using a glass slide. Now I'm using, good Lord, a gemstone slide. Actually, because I'm a huge gemstone fanatic. I love gemstones, and so I use a gemstone slide, and it creates somewhat of a bit of a darker tone than using steel or glass. And I love it. The glass is quicker, but the gemstone just has more of a meaning to it for me. So
it's about the energy and
totally, always. Yes.
Yeah. And I was curious about getting into lap steel guitar then. Where would you tell them to start? Because I remember I've been to a jam session in a pub and someone threw like a glass slide in my hand, and I thought, it's quite intimidating, right? They threw it in my hand and I was like, oh my gosh. And, you're giving it a go, but it's quite intimidating. So where would you tell someone to start?
If you're going to use a glass slide, the most important, thing is making sure you start with something that's comfortable to you. There's so many different slides and types of slides and sizes. Start with what's comfortable, and grab a technique, because there's so many different ways to use it, and Lord knows I don't help that, right? And so, but there's so many different ways to use it. Find one that's comfortable and find the style that it is that you want to play, and then just go from there. I would say, and don't get so caught up on specifics when it comes down to how to do this, how to do that. I believe that with slide playing, it comes from within. It's an expression that you have to make that comes from storytelling, and so you have to tell your life story with it, which I believe creates a certain vibration and vibrato, if you will. And so, the best way to start is from there. Find one that's comfortable. when you go from there, find that style that means the most to you, and then it's just express yourself. There's no right or wrong.
I can I ask you about lap steel as an instrument? Do you think it has room to grow in R&B music? It's not something we usually hear in R&B, is it?
You gotta remember, like, the lap steel guitar was one of the first. If I'm not mistaken, it was the first electric instrument.
Yeah,
from an electric guitar standpoint. So when I think of like Fender, the first guitar that was built was a lap steel guitar.
Yeah.
And so it was always there. Somehow or another, it got out. I don't know. People stopped playing it. I don't know what happened. But it definitely should be. It is music. It has its place in R&B music, of course. And I. To go technical again, I think once it's understood the different sounds and tuning options that you have out there, I think the more comfortable, many different, guitar players will be with playing and accepting it as an instrument that could be, within R&B music. It can do more than just sing, right? You can play beautiful R&B chords with it as well.
How do you make it sound modern? Because I think that's the thing with lap steel. People can have this idea that it's a bit outdated or it's from the 1930s, but how do you make space for it in a modern mix? How do you make it sound really current, would you say?
How I do it is I'm just going to go up, I was born in the 80s. And so all I could do is, create what I was used to hearing as far as it being, something that is current, so I can't pretend like I was just listening to Aretha Franklin and Mahalia Jackson, because I wasn't like that. I was listening to Bobby Brown. I was listening to New Edition. I'm listening to NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys. I'm listening to 50 Cent. I'm listening to Tupac Shakur. I'm listening to Fat Joe. I'm listening to all of this music growing up, and especially the early 2000s. So I can't possibly create something that sounds 1930-ish, because that wouldn't be, it wouldn't be truthful to the generation I grew up in. So,
well, I love what you're doing with it. I think it's so amazing, and it's very healing. It's incredible to see you just carving out this whole path for yourself and changing frequencies, and healing people.
That's again why I don't even look at the concerts as shows, or because the goal is to go more into the health and wellness world of things. And so I don't want anybody. You show up to an experience. Don't look for your typical concert, if you will. Look for an experience. Look to receive something that's incredible.